A frantic 911 call shatters the silence of rural Minnesota. Deputies rush to a remote hunting cabin expecting the unexpected, but nothing prepares them for what's waiting inside. A man is found lying on the ground, shell casings are scattered all around the room, and two witnesses stand nearby, frozen in fear, and one of them is family. As investigators dig deeper, the story begins to unravel in disturbing ways. The crime scene doesn't add up, the motive makes even less sense, and the truth behind who pulled the trigger leads to a betrayal so personal it left detectives completely stunned. Deputies from the Pine County Sheriff's Office were en route to a remote cabin located near Hinckley. See, a few minutes ago, 911 received a frantic call about a serious crime at the cabin, and police officers were dispatched at around 8:44 p.m. on November 15, 2024. The deputies were on high alert immediately. Right off the bat, they could sense the silence engulfing the cabin, and it was unsettling. As the deputies made their way to the cabin, they were flagged down by two people. Their names were Mark Hazlett and Justin Hornung. When the deputies asked who they were, they said that they were the ones that called 911 and that they needed to check out the cabin at the 57,000 block of Barn Spring Road. The officers went straight in the direction of the cabin, and as soon as they opened the door, they were stunned silent. A man lay on the floor of the cabin near a couch, and he was obviously injured, and tragically he could not be revived. Around the man's body lay several spent shell casings, so it didn't take long for the police to realize how the crime had unfolded. Someone had attacked a man in a remote hunting cabin and left him fatally injured. But who was the man, and who had done this to him? Well, the police got their first answer pretty soon because one of the people who led the deputies to the cabin was none other than the victim's brother. The man lying on the floor was identified as 62-year-old Kirk Hazlett II, and he was Mark's brother. The police were confused and a little bit suspicious. What happened inside this cabin? Who were these two men, and what were they hiding? Kirk Edward Hazlett II, simply known as Junior by his friends and family, was born in Lakeville, Minnesota, and he was defined as a loving and caring guy. Named after his dad, Kirk Hazlett Sr., Kirk, or Junior, was known to be a guy who loved the outdoors. He was a pretty simple guy who found joy in the simple things, whether it be sitting by a warm fire and sipping on his favorite beverage, or going on a date with his wife and soulmate, Deborah, or simply spending time with his family. If there's anything you should know about Junior, it's the fact he just loved his family. Family was the beginning and the end for this guy. He was very simple-minded in the best way possible. Junior met and fell in love with Deborah, and the couple had 3 boys, Kirk Edward III, Tristan, and Colton. Junior was the life of all gatherings. He had a wonderful smile, a warm, gentle personality, and friends and family defined him as an outdoorsy guy. He loved fishing, sailing, hunting, and camping. Basically, all the outdoor activities you can think of. He was also very enthusiastic about nearly everything he did. He had a very zesty persona about him that was a breath of fresh air for everyone who knew him, and he constantly motivated others and inspired them in the best way. He liked challenges and said no to nothing. He would also help others in need, and he was just an overall gem of a person. But fast forward to November of 2024, and now he was found lifeless and injured in a hunting cabin, a place that would normally be a getaway for someone like Junior. His family was notified of this tragic news almost immediately, and Deborah and the kids didn't believe what they were hearing. The Hazlett family needed answers. Who could have done this to Junior, a guy who never thought bad or spoke bad of anyone? Who would be so cruel and heartless to launch such a hateful attack on this man? And why? Well, the Hazlett family was looking to the police for answers, and the police needed to get to the bottom of the case before it was too late. But luckily, they already had their eyes on one man, but it wasn't anyone who the family would have expected. The police were immediately suspicious of the 2 men who flagged them down as they were approaching the cabin. One of the men was Junior's brother, Mark. What was he doing outside the cabin, and why was only Junior targeted? The police naturally suspect the people closest to the victim first, and Mark and Justin were on their radar. They needed to get more information from these two men, so they started with the obvious questions. What were the three men doing before that attack took place? What were they doing in the cabin? And what exactly happened on the evening of November 15th? Mark and Justin were questioned by the police, and they started telling the police everything that had gone down. Junior, his brother Mark, and a friend of both, Justin, had planned to spend the day at the cabin in Hinckley. It was remote, the weather was nice, and they all needed some outdoor activity to re-energize themselves. Everyone knew that the three were going on a cabin retreat. It was no last-minute secret plan that no one knew about. It had been planned for a good while now. The cabin where the attack took place actually belonged to Junior and Mark, and it wasn't their first time visiting either. The brothers had taken several trips to that same cabin before, sometimes with their friends and other times with their respective families. The point is, the place was not foreign to them, and hunting trips here were pretty normal. It was a very peaceful and quiet place, and it was a perfect little getaway for Junior, someone who adored nature and being outside. So the three men got settled into the cabin, and they were having the time of their lives. They went out to explore the vast area. They then vegged out in the cabin once they got tired, and before they knew it, it was time for dinner. So they had dinner, then just sat around talking. Now, this cabin, even though it was very remote, was also highly equipped with security. Multiple trail cameras were placed all around the property so that the family could keep tabs when no one was around. The brothers had installed a trail camera near the front of the cabin, and it would send a notification to their phones about anyone approaching close to the cabin. Basically, Mark and Junior could see who was going in and out or walking around the cabin from their phones, and this was exactly what happened. As the three men, Junior, Mark, and Justin, were finishing dinner, Mark heard a ping on his phone. Now, I don't know if Junior received the same notification or not. Maybe he didn't have his phone at the table, we don't know. But according to Justin, Junior finished dinner before him and Mark, and he settled on the couch with a drink in his hand. Regardless, Mark thought that it was weird for the phone to ding, because they were in a remote area. Sure, everyone from their family knew that the guys were at the cabin, but this area wasn't bustling by any means. Besides, the trail camera would only get triggered if someone entered the immediate vicinity of the cabin, so it sounded like someone was lurking outside. So Mark pulled out his phone, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Someone was walking up to the cabin where the men were at in that moment, and what was even more terrifying was the fact that the man was armed. Mark immediately notified Junior, and Justin made a beeline for his bedroom to retrieve his own weapon, but Mark couldn't act fast enough. As he was in his bedroom searching for a weapon to protect himself and the rest of the guys, he heard the side door of the cabin fling open, and right away, Mark heard three distinct sounds, and he didn't need any confirmation to know that someone was hurt. Mark told the police that he walked out of the bedroom and saw his brother Junior lying on the floor near the couch, still alive at that point. Mark clarified that he didn't see Junior move or anything, but he did see him breathing. Mark was literally speechless at that moment. He truly didn't know what to do. Justin was still there in the living room, but he was unharmed. The armed man ordered Mark and Justin to sit on the couch and not try to do anything. Mark and Justin obliged because what else are you supposed to do in that situation? As Mark and Justin took their seats on the couch, they started pleading with the armed man not to hurt them. The two men were petrified, and they just wanted to get back home to their families. They didn't know what would set this man off, and they didn't even know why he was here in the first place, so they just sat there quietly pleading, waiting for the man to do whatever he felt he needed to do. But the assailant never said another word. He just stood there quiet, standing there. Mark remembered that he didn't say anything as he entered the cabin either. He clearly just came here to launch an attack on the people inside. But as Mark and Justin were trying to plead with the killer, the man calmly turned his back towards them, walked back over to Junior, and finished what he started. If Mark and Justin were scared before, their fear reached new heights after this moment, and they once again began pleading with the armed man to let them go. That was when the murderer finally spoke. He instructed the two men who were still unharmed to leave their phones with him and run away. Just go. Mark and Justin complied, and they left their phones at the cabin before running out the door to find help. I'm assuming the armed man didn't want Mark or Justin to call the police immediately, and that was why he asked them to leave their phones with him, giving him just enough time to get away. Well, after getting out of the cabin shaken and traumatized, Mark and Justin went to a neighboring cabin at a distance and called the police from there. And then they waited. Little did they know, the murderer had already left the cabin. Mark and Justin waited for the police to arrive, and when they saw police cars approaching the cabin, they ran towards the deputies and flagged them down. This was how the police found them. So all the suspicion that the police felt towards Mark and Justin had now disappeared. They weren't behind Junior's passing. They were actually the only witnesses to the crime. But if they didn't take Junior's life, who did? The police were left stunned at Mark's version of events, and when they asked Justin, he told the police the same thing, frame by frame, second by second. It didn't look rehearsed or sketchy in any way. The men were clearly traumatized and shaken. They were also emotional and just kept asking about Junior. It was heartbreaking. And in the meantime, an autopsy was conducted, and the results were really tragic. Junior had sustained several firearm injuries, and it was just a brutal attack that led to Junior's untimely passing. So now the police needed to find out who this mysterious armed man was. Was he a regular offender who committed crimes in remote areas? Would he strike again? The police had to race against time to find answers. They first checked the trail camera at the cabin, and sure enough, they saw the armed man walking up the driveway and towards the cabin where Junior and the guys were staying. So Mark and Justin were telling the truth. They also found out how the armed assailant arrived at the cabin. A black 2014 Ford Fusion was seen at the end of the driveway, and after Mark and Justin left, the assailant booked it in the black car and disappeared from the frame of the cameras. The police needed to find this car. This was the only thing that could lead them to their guy. The police also asked witnesses if they saw or heard anything weird. Investigators also talked to family members and tried to pry for any information that could point to the fact that Junior had any enemies. The police were also trying to look for any other surveillance footage or cameras that could have caught that black Ford, but honestly, they didn't have to look much further. They got to know something very incriminating about the crime from the get-go, and it was from none other than Mark and Justin, the two witnesses who saw every second of what went down in that cabin. Mark and Justin knew the person behind the trigger. It was easy because the assailant didn't do anything to hide his face. But if that wasn't enough, Mark and Justin knew the person's name too. It was someone really close to them, someone that Mark had seen grow up right before his eyes. What's worse is that even Junior knew who his murderer was. He knew the killer all too well because the murderer shared the same blood with Junior. The person who drove Junior to his demise was his own son. To say that the police were getting whiplash from the amount of twists in this case is an understatement. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. Junior's own son was the person who attacked and fatally injured him? But who was it? Which son? Junior had three: Tristan, Colton, and Kirk Edward III. When they asked Mark which son was their father's murderer, they were left even more surprised. It turns out that along with DNA, the murderer and the victim shared the same name too. The attacker was none other than Kirk Edward Hazlett III. But what was going on? What happened between a son and a father that led to such a grim ending? Well, let's just say that Junior and Kirk weren't on good terms. When the police dug a little deeper, they found from Junior's family that Kirk and Junior had a falling out, and there was some sort of domestic dispute between the two, and ever since then, their relationship had been strained. Now, unfortunately, we don't really have any details about what this father and son conflict involved. It could have been something major. It could have been something petty. We don't know, and I guess at the end of the day, it really isn't our business. All we know is that it was something serious and that the two, Kirk and Junior, hadn't been on the best of terms for a long time. It must have been something serious, though, because if you remember, Junior was a family guy through and through. He valued family more than anything. So I'm assuming that something must have been seriously damaging to have led to having some kind of falling out with your own son like this and just cutting ties. But we don't know. Another very unsettling thing that happened between Junior and Kirk was an accident that took place a month before Junior's tragic end. And coincidentally, it happened at this very cabin. See, sometime in October of 2024, the police were called to that same cabin for a disturbance, and that disturbance was a fight that had broken out between Junior and Kirk. Kirk was highly intoxicated, and he was spewing all sorts of nonsense at his dad, even threatening him at one point. Junior told law enforcement that he wanted Kirk to leave, and after that, the police took care of things and they removed Kirk from the cabin. Simple as that. But something that's a little bit odd is that Mark and other family members mentioned the fact that Kirk didn't like the new security system that Junior had installed at the cabin. And this was also a source of argument between the two. But why? Why would a son not want his family's property to be properly protected? Well, we don't know what his reasoning was behind this, but it was certainly bizarre. So with that, the police now knew who the killer was, but they still needed to find him. Being a criminal on the run, the guy could literally be anywhere. But thankfully, the police didn't have to look very hard, or very far for that matter, because Kirk, he came right to them. It was the Asante County Sheriff's Office that received a call from none other than Kirk, but he wasn't calling to confess to murdering his dad, he was calling about an unrelated concern involving his girlfriend of all things. Well, the police managed to find out Kirk's location through a cell phone tower ping, and he was found about 8 miles away from the cabin where he had taken the life of his dad in his home in Cambridge. The police immediately sent out a team to arrest Kirk, and as soon as they pulled up to the driveway, officers saw a familiar sight. A black 2014 Ford Fusion was parked outside of Kirk's home. When the police ran the plates, they found out that the vehicle was registered under Kirk's girlfriend's name. So basically, this guy borrowed his girlfriend's car to travel 8 miles to his dad's cabin, where he did the unthinkable. Good luck wrapping your head around that. But anyway, Kirk was home, and he was arrested in no time for murdering his dad and holding his uncle and friend hostage in the cabin. But the police also wanted to talk to Kirk's girlfriend, and she also said the same thing about Kirk, that he was not on good terms with his dad. Her exact words were that Kirk didn't see eye to eye with Junior. She further said that Kirk wasn't a fan of the new security system that his dad had installed at the cabin, and also he was frustrated because he hadn't tagged a deer that year. But what that had to do with Kirk Sr., I have no idea. But regardless of Kirk's feelings, beliefs, opinions, whatever it was, the police picked him up and immediately placed him under arrest. He was calm and emotionless as he was being taken away in a police car for murdering his own father. And speaking of calm, Mark and Justin also talked to the police about Kirk's very odd behavior back at the cabin at the time of the attack. Justin was appalled at how calm and in control Kirk was. According to Mark and Justin, Kirk looked like a man on a mission, and what a mission it was. Kirk didn't say a word as he entered the cabin and ruthlessly launched an attack on a defenseless Junior, his own father. Can you imagine what Junior must have been thinking during those final moments? To be targeted by your own son, it's one of the worst things imaginable. Mark and Justin also witnessed that Kirk looked alert, coherent, and completely in control over his actions. See, the police initially suspected that Kirk must have been under the influence of something. Not that that's any excuse, but that wasn't even the case. Kirk was fully in his right mind. His gait was determined, and he didn't slur any of his words as he spoke. He didn't seem to be in a trance or anything. He planned everything to the T. He knew that he had to take Mark and Justin's phone to delay the arrival of the police so that he could then make a run for it. But why he made a run for it, I don't even know, because these two clearly saw his face. He made no attempt to conceal his identity. So he knew he was going to get caught. This thought alone should have led him to not call the police on his girlfriend that day. He should have been fleeing town entirely, living on the run. This whole thing just didn't make sense. What was he thinking? And what was his plan? Did he just think that Mark and Justin wouldn't rat on him? Well, Kirk was charged with second-degree murder, burglary, and kidnapping, but 3 months later, in February 2025, 31-year-old Kirk Edward Hazlett III had his charges revised, and now he was facing charges for first-degree murder, as well as kidnapping for the time that he held Mark and Justin in the cabin against their will. He's currently imprisoned at Pine County Jail on a whopping $3 million bail, without conditions, and $1 million bail with conditions. So with these charges, it's clear to see Kirk will likely not be leaving a prison cell if he's convicted. When stacked, the charges against him total around 65 years behind bars. But whether he'll be given the opportunity for parole, that remains to be seen. So it's safe to say that Kirk, who had no criminal record before this attack, is likely going to stay behind bars for the rest of his life. I just hope that Junior's family gets some sort of semblance of peace with this sentencing. It's terrifying to think that his son went as far as murdering his own dad over a personal conflict, and that too so coldly and so calculated. Losing a husband and father, that's hard enough, but when you factor in losing a son, this is just a very strange, weird place that the family must be in, and I just hope they're doing okay. There's no amount of prison time that can bring Junior back, but maybe in some small way, Kirk's punishment can help bring the family some semblance of closure as they continue their search for answers. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of True Crime Stories. I wanted to give a special thank you to a couple channel members, including The Adventures of Juan and Ashley, Nathan Orston, Victoria Weza, Donna Marshall, and Amber Tate. If you also want to become a member of the channel, you'll gain access to new videos sometimes days or weeks before they're uploaded to the public, and it's a great way to support the channel and help out. And I really appreciate all of you guys that have decided to do that. If you want to join, you can click that big join button below the video, or find the link down in the description. And don't forget, True Crime Stories t-shirts are also now available. You can grab one of those from a link down in the description as well. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, check out this other interesting case I covered. And don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free and just keeps you up to date with all my future videos. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.